Hey, welcome to the channel, everybody. All right, today what we're going to do, and I already have 3 of them done here, and basically the way I'm trying to do these videos is get as much of the busy work done as I can off camera, and then go ahead and show you what how I did it and what I did. Then I don't have to do any editing where I'm kind of speeding it up and you get to watch me basically just do the same thing over and over and over. I can talk you through the process that I went through to get the last cylinder done just as easily as I could for the first one. But then you in the end you'll get to see everything all put together. So what I did is already set the piston ring end gaps, and this is something I think everybody should do whenever they're building a motor. And you just want to check them out of the box. Most of them are going to be within spec. There was actually only 3 rings out of the set that I had to actually file. And whenever you file them, use a tool that looks like this. And the ring just sits on here. You slide up against these bump stops on either side and just turn the crank. And I was actually surprised how aggressive this wheel is as far as grit. But it doesn't take too much, just about that much. And the one was done, and about turn, maybe two and a half turns for one of the other ones, and it was the ring end gap was set. And after you get the gap set, which I'm going to show you the procedure for that. After you do that, what you do is you take a file and you just kind of knock the burrs off of these edges here on all 4 sides. Okay, and now this set here, it has a MOLLE top ring. This is the second ring, the cast iron second ring. But on the MOLLE ring, you always want to file on the outside this way. Because I guess from what I've heard, if you file back this way, you can actually remove the MOLLE. You can actually pull it out and it'll ruin the ring. So to check the ring gap, what we do is we just slide it down in the cylinder. Okay, and then we're going to grab the piston and rod assembly. Just going to push that down about an inch or so. And then, let me see here. I have my my feeler gauge set up here, and the one here is for the top ring, the other one's for the second ring. So then what we do is we find the gap, and we just push that in there, and that just slides in there. I don't have to force it. It just feels a little snug. It's not rattling about, but it just feels a little snug. So that is good. We are good to go. And I'm gonna have to move the camera around. Let me pull this out of here. Try and pull this out as square as we can. I already have the cylinder all lubricated first. Since the motor's been setting a little while, I went ahead and completely cleaned the cylinder and cleaned the crankshaft journal. There's a little bit of fuzz from the towels being wrapped around the motor while I was waiting for today. And so after that, I lubricated the cylinder wall just with some 30 weight oil, and now we're getting ready to put the rings in the piston, and we're going to install one of the pistons, the last piston and rod assembly today. So we're going to turn the camera here a little bit. All right, try and get this. There we go. You can see our piston and rod assembly here. I want to make sure that we get, just give me 1 second here. There we go. I think that should be pretty good. There we go. Okay. This is a bit of a ghetto ring compressor that it served me pretty well over the years. I actually had the machine shop making one for me that'll be this bore. So if I ever have to do this again, basically it'll just be like a pro. Just slide the piston in and just kind of tap it into place. These are a little bit tricky. I'll show you a couple of the things you have to watch out for whenever we use that. But I just have this here because this requires a lot of lubrication to do this properly, and it's going to drip everywhere. So I just got a little throwaway pan here just to keep things a little more tidy. All right, let's move this actually down here. There we go. So we can do this a little bit easier. Okay, so we already got the wrist pin nice and lubricated. It's got plenty of assembly lube on there, which is what we want. And we're going to install our rings. First one we're going to put on is the oil ring. So we put the center section on first, Want to make sure that the two ends are butted up against each other. And then we're going to take their thin pieces here, or thin rings that go along with that. And we're going to change the clocking where that gap is, where they're butted together, kind of turn it that way. I'm going to change the clocking on this one to do the bottom one first and just kind of spiral it down around. There, see that end's trying to pop out, but you gotta keep an eye on that. You can see it's kind of stuck on the top side, so we're gonna just gently bring it down to the bottom side. And again, get that expansion ring in there, just where it's butted up against. Wants to stack up. There we go. Okay, so that's one. Now we're going to take the other one. You can see we have where it butted up against on the center portion. It's over here. The bottom one's over here, and then we're going to take the top one and we're going to put it over here. So I don't want all those lined up. Okay, and just spiral that into the top portion of the groove, and that looks pretty good. And just want to double check it, make sure that the bottom one hasn't come out, make sure that the center section is still butted up against itself, and then the top one's in place. And that's done. Okay, next is the scraper ring. I call it the scraper ring. Some people call it a second compression ring, but it serves two purposes. One is the top compression ring keeps the gases and everything in the cylinder. This is kind of like a backup to that, but also it serves to scrape the oil, most of the oil off the cylinder wall as the piston comes down. And then that, of course, washes down as it comes up. More oil slings up. That lubricates the wall, pulls the cylinder wall, pulls some of the heat out of the motor, and then it comes back down. You can imagine if that wasn't there, a lot of that oil, or this top ring, would have to be doing a lot more work. And it's very hot up here, and you can get oil baked on there, and then that ring can seize, and then you have all kind of oil control issues. All right. Anyway, from now, what we're going to do is put the second ring on, which is the middle ring. And on these particular rings, they have a little dot that tells you which side goes up, because a lot of these rings, there's a bevel on them and on the inside, and that bevel has to go a certain way. So if I installed it this way, it wouldn't be as efficient. It actually is designed to go in this way. And a lot of guys will use a tool where they'll put the ring on the tool, and you squeeze it, and it spreads the ring, and you slide it down on. A lot of professional builders use those. I don't want to use that because actually a lot of professional builders do it this way too. I'll show you, but I don't want to do that because I'm trying to keep the tension on these rings as low as possible, and to expand them out that far, it really kind of stretches the rings, kind of spreads it, and puts a lot of pressure on the cylinder wall, and you can get some premature cylinder wall wear. I know that from experience. So I kind of like to go this route without the ring expander. So we're gonna start that in the second groove and just kind of work it around and bring it down. And it's kind of stuck in the top ring groove there. Just kind of nudge it out. And these are fairly brittle, so you have to be careful. And you can see it just kind of fell in there. Once you get it past this top ring groove, it'll just fall into place. And there's a special clocking that we're going to use on this. I'll show you that in a minute. But we have to go to our top ring, and these still have a little bit of oil on them. And I don't see a little dot on that one. Let's see. And right there's, I don't know if you can see that on camera, but it's just a little, looks like somebody just touched it with a punch, but that's the way that the ring is made. I don't know if you've ever seen a Molly ring, but let me bring this over. You see that little shiny bit there on the edge, and then it's black. That's a little groove that they cut in the ring, and then it's filled with a Molly. I don't know. They just call it Molly. It's probably short for Molly Molybdenum. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Can't really pronounce it very well, but there's something special about them. They say they're better for high performance. It wasn't that much more to get these over a cast ring, so we upgraded. So we have our little pinpoint facing up, so we're going to place that in there, bring it around, just kind of snake it around, and that's it. That is it. Now we're going to lube it up. Now with this one, I ran into trouble the last time I put a motor together. I used 2050 on these, and it didn't go so well. It actually had one of the rod and piston assemblies that it kind of seized in the piston, and it overheated the rod, ruined the piston, and here we are today with a new piston. So all the motors I've ever built before, I use Marvel Mystery Oil on the rings whenever I install them. I have motor oil on the cylinder wall, Marvel Mystery Oil on here, and then I'll use a little bit of motor oil on here. So it's kind of it basically is about a 50-50 mix. So we're just gonna very liberally apply that, and then we want to turn those rings a little bit, kind of spin them around a little, kind of get that all over the rings. A nice coating in there, get that all spread out, especially in this oil ring. Just get a little bit more there. I want to make sure the skirts are covered. And now we have the intake side and the exhaust side. The exhaust side is the thrust side on this motor. So we want to actually bring the ring gaps around, and I'm not too concerned with the oil ring, but I do want to watch on the second and first ring here. What I'm going to do is set this second ring at about a 45-degree angle, and then I'm going to bring the top ring over to be about a 45. So these are going to be about 90 degrees away from each other, and that's how I want them in the motor. So from here, we're going to prep our ring compressor. Put a little bit of oil on here. Get that all lubed up. Now you notice on this, you see these silver bands. That's where all the tension is. The tension is not up here, so there is a top and bottom to this. So we want to get the silver bands over top of where the rings would set. And they give you a little special tool with this. We're going to put that in here. Crank it down. And you can see it's not quite centered, so we'll just kind of tap it so that it's nice and even, so it's not on there like a spiral, like a twist. And you get oily doing this, but that's all part of it. All right, now this is where I like to just kind of lay it down and really get this tight. I want to kind of look at the top of it. If it's shifted this way at all, I'll tap it and kind of bring it up, bring it centered. It looks like it is. That's one thing, these are a little finicky, you have to be careful with them. Once I get that centered, put the tool in here and see if we can get one more click out of it. Close. No, that's about as tight as it'll go. Hopefully that's enough. Okay, let me clean up here. All right, now, after all this, now we want to install the bearings. Move this out of the way. Now we want to install the bearing in the rod assembly and in the cap. So the bearing's already been cleaned. I already cleaned this surface, and any dust or dirt or lint or little pieces of shop towel, fibers, anything, I want that completely clean, because anything that sits underneath that is going to change the clearance. It's going to push up on this bearing. It's going to change the clearance in this bearing. So from here you can see that we have our notch here and the bearing. Set that. What I like to do is I like to put the notch side in first, kind of hold it in place, and then just press down, and it'll just kind of lock into position. Give a little press there, and we're good to go. Then we're going to do the same thing with the cap. This has already been cleaned. Take a little bit of brake clean or some denatured alcohol, and I'm even trying to avoid touching the back of this, and for sure touching this. That way, if there's any kind of little, anything, a little piece of metal from filing the rings, maybe whenever I wipe my hands off, it didn't come off, lint, anything. I want to try and keep that off from underneath the bearing. And press that in. There's a little piece of lint that fell right there. See that? And press that in, and that's locked in. And I can see the bearing is pretty much flush here and pretty much flush here. Now, if you put the bearing in and it does look a little bit proud of this surface, that's okay. These bearings have what's called a crush. And whenever you put everything together, make sure that looks like that might be a problem. Just want to take a look at that. I'm going to pull this out. Okay, it's okay. All right. These bearings have what's called a crush, so they actually will, where the other half and this half meet, that'll kind of get smushed a little bit, and that's what sets your bearing clearance. There it goes, and there it just snapped into place. It looked like I had like a little bit of a piece of lint or something there. I don't know what that was. So you can't be too careful. You gotta really watch these. Yeah, we're doing good. I like these Eagle rods. They have a little ring right here to help center them. And whenever we put this in the motor, we want to make sure that this little tab and this tab are on the same side. But you can see whenever they're mated up, they're actually opposite, so they kind of stop each other from letting the bearing rotate, or they push against each other to keep the bearing from rotating. All right, now we're gonna turn it and turn the camera again to the motor here, and we're gonna install our piston and rod assembly, and hopefully that'll do it right there. Okay, here we go. All right, next we're going to take our assembly lube, and we don't want to go sparingly with this. We want to use a very liberal amount. Get that all coated with all the surface of the bearing completely coated. There's going to be some thicker parts and thinner parts, but that's okay. Whenever it's pushed against the crankshaft, it'll all spread out even. That's fine. All right. Normally, I would have the motor straight, the setting straight up and down. I just have it tilted this way to make it a little bit easier for you guys to see what I'm doing here. And now we want to make sure that we get the thing clocked correctly. For instance, the intake valves are on this side, exhaust valves on this side. Intake valves and exhaust valves. So what we got to do is rotate the piston. And again, these ratcheting type ring compressors are a little bit tricky. So we're going to be real careful whenever we put this in. Start like that, down the side of the bore. Don't want that binding up. And just fit right in there. There we go. Now I want to make sure that it's not turned this way. I want to make sure that it's pretty much straight. It's okay if it's turned just a little bit. I can always straighten it out later, but you just have to be a little bit careful whenever you do that. That's all. Okay. And I have the ring compressor. It is, there we go. I'm just going to push it down so it's setting flat on the block the whole way around. And then we're going to take our hammer and just kind of tap it in. And before I did this, I turned the crankshaft so that the throw that this goes on is at the bottom. It's at the bottom of the stroke. That way I don't have to worry about the connecting rod going down and striking the crankshaft and marring that. And then we would have to tear this entire thing apart. So we don't want that to happen. So here we go. So I love tapping in. And right there, it seems like one of the rings are hung up because the ring compressor isn't quite tight enough. So we're going to just grab our tool here. That's one thing. There we go. See the ring is popping out there. Now, normally I would pull this out and reset it and then put it all back together again. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it here and loosen this up just a little bit. I'll show you how to do this without pulling up open it up a little. There we go. I don't know if you can see that, but the top compression ring is kind of stuck right there. The ring compressor didn't quite compress that enough. So what we're going to do is open that up, put it down. I'm going to hold it against the block, and what happened is the piston was going down. This kind of slid up a little bit, and it let a little bit of a gap, and it let that ring kind of pop out a little. So if I would try and hammer that in, most likely it would snap that ring, and then I'd be running with a broken ring. So I'm going to hold this down against the block and then bring the ring compressor down to it. flat. And there we go. And then we're going to try it again. And there it goes. It went right in. Perfect. Okay. Now we're going to flip it up. Flip it around here. And get a tension stand. Try to get my... Come on now. Try to get that locked in so it doesn't rotate around. There we go. Okay. All right. Now, I use a screwdriver and very carefully hold the rod out, the rod vertical, while I gently tap the piston up into place. And you should be able to see the rod. You might be able to see the rod coming up. I don't know whether you used to be able to see the rod coming up. Let me show you this here real quick. You can see what that looks like down there. It's right down the side there. We're going to bring it right up to this journal. So what I'm going to do is hold this out with the screwdriver very gently as I tap that up. Okay. There we go. Try and set our camera back up again so we can see what we're doing. There we go. As you can see, I'm not a professional YouTuber. Just a guy in the shed building a motor. And we have an issue. I'm going to show you what this is. What happened is the rod assembly. I don't know if you can really see it too well. Yeah, it's in there. See, it's twisted a little bit. All right. So that's a real easy to fix. What we're going to do is go down here. I'll show you this on camera. And all you have to do is put a screwdriver in here and just kind of twist it a little bit, and that's it. And then we straighten it out, and that looks pretty good. And that's all there is to it. All right, let's get back to it. I'm kind of glad a couple of those things fouled up, like the ring compressor and that got in a little crooked. Just shows you like some of the stuff you have to deal with and how to fix it. So it worked out good. Bring this up. And our rod assembly fell over. Bring this up. There we go. Now I want to be real careful in this last little bit because the rod's going to want to move back and forth a little. I actually don't need the screwdriver anymore because I can reach it with my finger. I want to hold that so that it's nice and centered on the journal and bring it right up. And that's it. All right, now we're going to do the assembly lube on this half of the bearing. What stuff? It is sticky. It is sticky for sure. The other thing I want to check whenever I pull this up is I want to make sure the bearing hasn't moved, because as I'm tapping it, that vibration can sometimes dislodge the bearing. I want to make sure it hasn't moved. If it's moved a little bit, I can actually take the screwdriver here and just kind of push on it and get it centered back in the rod cap. You don't want to hammer on it or anything like that. You just kind of give it a little nudge. Now I'm watching where the tab is there and where the tab is here. I want to mate those up. That way the rod's going to go back together the way the manufacturer intended. All right, pretty good. Now, these rods have ARP bolts in them, and ARP is very specific about the need for using their lubricant on the bolts to get a proper torque reading. So just put a little bit of their special lube on there and just kind of run it through, run it around. I don't want it globbed on there, but I want it just a nice even coating and wipe off the excess. That's all we need. Spin it around. You just got to get into your work. down. And my rag. Okay, now, pretty simple. All we do is just spin these down. Now, I want to be real careful. Whenever I tighten these up, I don't want to tighten one side up all the way and have the cap on there all crooked. So I'm going to get just a little bit. I'll just go by feel. It's starting to just snug up a little bit. And you feel that bottomed out, and that bottomed out. Okay. Now, the specs for this, for these particular rod bolts, is 43 foot-pounds. I don't want to go up to 43 here and then do 43 here. I want to do it in steps. So just calculating in my head, probably first one we'll do is about 15 pounds. So we'll go up to about 15 pounds right there. And 15 pounds right there. Okay. Then we're going to go to 30. There's 30. And 43. And it's pretty hard to get 43 out of it. 42 and a half, 43. I want to do this nice and smooth. Nice and smooth. If you get up around 40 and then stop, there's what's called a breakaway torque, where the friction between the bolt and the connecting rod, in order to break free and start to move again, could actually be higher than 43 pounds. So I don't want to stop anywhere close to 43 pounds. I want to stop well back of it. And then on the last one, we'll just pull it right up nice and smooth, right up to 43 pounds right there. And that's all we have to do. Okay. And that is how you put a rod and piston assembly in. And after this is done, what I like to do, I'm just going to step in front of the camera here, is just going to put the socket on the front of the crankshaft, just cycle it around a little bit, spread the assembly lube around, and spread the oil onto the cylinder walls a little bit, and do that. And then, since we're here today, I'm going to jump in front of it again. Since we're here today, I'm going to show you a couple little things here. We talked about this bolt earlier in the video. There's a few things that are real important with these motors. I'll show you a couple things here. Another one, let me get this thing locked in. Yep. Get it in. There we go. All right, a couple little things here. I want to be careful of this right here. This is a check valve. With this port, this sends oil up to the head to lubricate the cam journals, and then these are the drain back holes here. And there's a little check ball in there. And what that check ball does is, once the oil goes up, it keeps oil from draining back, so that whenever you start the motor, there's oil in the camshaft journals and the lifters, because these are hydraulic lifters in these motors. So I want to make sure that's there. If you have this resurfaced, it's probably a good idea to remove that, because you're going to get a lot of debris down in there. I did clean this out, turned it over, and sprayed some brake clean through the oil passages down through here to flush anything out. So ran the hose through that and everything. Next thing I want to look at is this little guy right here. This is where the dipstick tube goes in, and we never want to put it in with it facing the crankshaft, with these little vent holes facing the crankshaft. Always want to turn it so these are facing the outside of the motor, and that just drops in like that, and then you press it down. I'll just use a screwdriver and press that down. And that's how you do your rod and piston assemblies on a 4-cylinder. Thanks for watching. There's a Patreon link down below if you want to get into that. Just kind of threw that on there just to try and help me out a little bit with the channel. And if you want to hit the bell, so next time I upload a video, you can you get notified. And also if you like and subscribe, appreciate it. Thanks, folks. See you next time.